You wake to the sound of reed mats crunching under sandaled feet, the air thick with the metallic tang of incense and the distant bleat of sacrificial goats. It's still dark in the mud brick house, the kind where walls sweat in the Mesopotamian heat, and your small hands clutch at the woolen blanket your mother wove last harvest. You're no more than 12 summers old, skin smooth and unmarked, eyes wide with the innocence of one who's never known a lover's touch. But the men at the door aren't family. They're priests from the great temple of Marduk, their shaved heads gleaming in the torchlight, robes dyed deep purple from crushed snails imported from the sea. One of them, with a beard curled like a scorpion's tail, leans down, his breath hot against your ear, whispering words in Akkadian that promise divine favor. Your mother weeps silently in the corner, her calloused fingers twisting the hem of her tunic, knowing she can't refuse the god's call. The fear coils in your gut like the Euphrates floodwaters, cold and unstoppable, as they lift you from your bed and carry you out into the starlit streets of Babylon, where the ziggurat looms like a shadowed giant waiting to swallow you whole. Before diving into these forgotten stories of survival and suffering, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. The night air bites at your bare arms as they march you through the winding alleys, past homes where oil lamps flicker behind lattice windows, casting jagged shadows on the baked clay walls. You can hear the murmur of the river nearby, its waters dark and sluggish under the moon, carrying the silt that feeds the fields beyond the city gates. Babylon in those days, around 1800 BC under King Hammurabi's rule, sprawls like a living beast, its heart pulsing in the temple district where the gods demand their due. Your feet, unused to the rough paving stones, stumble on a loose brick, and the priest's grip tightens on your shoulder, his rings digging into your flesh like the claws of a lion from the royal hunts. He doesn't speak again, but his eyes, lined with kohl to ward off evil spirits, hold a gleam that's not kindness. It's the look of a man who serves powers greater than kings, powers that twist human lives into offerings. In the shadow of the ziggurat, built layer upon layer like the steps to heaven itself, the priests of Marduk and his consort held sway over souls and bodies alike. Hammurabi, born around 1810 BC and ascending the throne in 1792 BC, had codified laws on a towering diorite stele, proclaiming justice from the gods. But even he bowed to the temple's ancient rites. Those rites, etched into clay tablets in the wedge-shaped script of cuneiform, spoke of purity and sacrifice, of young lives dedicated to divine service. You, a boy from a humble family of weavers near the Ishtar Gate, have been chosen not for your strength or wit, but for your untouched state, a male virgin as the priests call it, ripe for the goddess Ishtar's embrace. The air grows heavier as you approach the temple enclosure, scented with myrrh burning in bronze braziers, the smoke curling up to mingle with the stars. Guards at the gate, their spears tipped with copper forged in the temple forges, nod silently, their faces impassive under helmets adorned with feathers from exotic birds traded from distant Dilmun. Inside, the courtyard hums with activity even at this hour. Acolytes, boys not much older than you but already marked by the life here, sweep the flagstones with palm-frond brooms, their movements mechanical, eyes downcast. One glances up, his gaze hollow, cheeks gaunt from the temple's sparse meals of barley bread and dates. He hesitates, mouth opening as if to warn you, but a senior priest's sharp cough silences him, the unspoken rule hanging thick, no words against the god's will. The power here flows from the high priest, a figure named Enmerkar in those years, descended from a line that claimed direct whispers from Marduk himself. Enmerkar, with his embroidered robes heavy with gold thread, imported from the mines of Anatolia, decides fates with a nod, his decisions binding as the Euphrates current. Your mother had pleaded with the local scribe to petition against this, her tears staining the papyrus, but the response came swift. The omens, read from sheep livers in the divination halls, demanded a new servant for Ishtar's cult. They lead you to a chamber deep within the temple, walls painted with frescoes of lions and bulls locked in eternal combat, symbols of the goddess's dual nature, love and war. The room smells of olive oil and sweat, lit by tallow candles that sputter in the draught from narrow vents. Here the priests prepare you, stripping away your simple linen tunic, the fabric rough against your skin, woven from flax your father harvested before the last flood took him. Naked now, you shiver despite the warmth, as they anoint your body with scented oils pressed from sesame seeds, murmuring incantations from tablets committed to memory over generations. The words invoke Ishtar, the morning and evening star, goddess of fertility and battle, whose temples across Mesopotamia, from Uruk to Nineveh, housed servants of both sexes dedicated to her mysteries. But for boys like you, the dedication carries a darker edge, one rooted in rituals that ensure eternal purity through irreversible acts. Historical records from the time preserved on clay tablets excavated at sites like Nippur and Babylon itself detail the roles of the Asinio and Kurgaru, male devotees of Ishtar who performed in her honor, often dressing in women's garments, their voices raised in lamentations that echoed through the temple halls. These men, according to texts from the old Babylonian period around 1900 to 1600 BC, were not born to their roles but chosen and transformed, their bodies altered to prevent the distractions of worldly desires. The process begins with isolation, as it does for you now, locked in this chamber with only a straw mat and a jug of water flavored with tamarisk leaves to purify the blood. Days pass in solitude. The only sounds the distant chants of the Gala priests, their high-pitched voices a haunting melody that seeps through the walls like river mist. Hunger gnaws at you, deliberate, to weaken resistance, while visions come in the dim light, dreams of your mother's face, distorted by grief, or the fields where you once chased fireflies under the summer sky. And Mikar visits on the third night, his presence announced by the clink of amulets on his chest, carved from lapis lazuli brought from the mountains of Badakhshan. He sits cross-legged before you, his eyes probing, searching for signs of defiance. The goddess requires vessels empty of mortal taint, he says, voice smooth as polished obsidian. You want to scream, to beg for release, but fear seals your lips. The unspoken truth lingers. That refusal means not just your death, but your family's ruin, their land seized for the temple coffers under Hammurabi's laws that protect sacred property. Power dynamics in Babylon tilt heavily toward the priesthood. Kings like Hammurabi, who died in 1750 BC, funded grand temples to legitimize their rule, but the priests controlled the divine oracles that could topple thrones. Enmekar's hesitation is brief, a flicker in his gaze as he recalls his own youth, perhaps. But duty hardens him. He explains the rite in hushed tones, not with cruelty, but with the conviction of one who believes the god's hunger must be sated. The act itself, confirmed in medical texts from the period and allusions in mythological epics like the Descent of Inanna, involves castration, a severing to preserve virginity, transforming boys into eunuchs fit for eternal service. Tools for this, described in inventories from temple archives, include bronze knives sharpened on whetstones and herbal poultices to staunch bleeding. On the appointed dawn, as the sun gilds the ziggurat's summit, they bind you to a wooden altar in a secluded sanctum, the wood smooth from countless uses, stained dark with old blood. The air reeks of vinegar used to clean the blades, and your cries mingle with the priest's hymns invoking Ishtar's mercy. Pain explodes like a storm over the Tigris, your body arching against the ropes woven from date palm fibers. The chief surgeon, a man named Shulgi Apil, from a family of healers trained in the Edinburgh schools, works with steady hands, his brow furrowed in concentration, whispering apologies under his breath that no one else hears. Blood pools on the stone floor, warm and sticky, while attendants press cloth soaked in myrrh against the wound, the scent cloying, overpowering the metallic bite. Recovery stretches over weeks in a dim infirmary, where fever dreams blur the line between waking and delirium. You hear the groans of others like you, boys from across the empire, some from Kish, others dragged from villages along the Euphrates. One, a lad named Belshunu, whispers in the night, his voice cracked from the change, sharing tales of his home where date palms whispered in the wind. His grief is palpable, fingers clutching at the bandages, eyes wet with unshed tears. The priests monitor closely, applying salves from crushed garlic and honey to fend off infection, their care efficient but detached, like farmers tending livestock. Psychological scars run deeper, confusion swirls in your mind, a storm of why the gods will, they say, but the doubt festers unspoken, for questioning invites the wrath of Marduk, whose statues in the main hall glare with eyes of shell and gold. Once healed, your new life unfolds in the temple's rhythm. Dressed in flowing skirts of fine linen dyed with indigo from Phoenician traders, you learn the dances of the Kagaru, movements that mimic the goddess's battles, feet stamping on reed mats to the beat of drums skinned from goat hides. Your voice, altered by the rite, joins the gala choirs, singing laments for Tammuz, Ishtar's consort who dies each year with the dry season. These performances, detailed in ritual text from the 18th century BC, draw crowds to the temple festivals, where offerings of silver and grain fill the coffers. But beneath the spectacle lies the horror. Enforced servitude, bodies remade without consent, purity preserved at the cost of humanity. Power whispers in every corner. The high priest's favor grants better rations, a softer bed, while disfavor means nights in the outer courts, exposed to the chill winds off the desert. Stories of such boys pepper the historical record, though names are rare, preserved in administrative tablets listing temple personnel. One tablet from Babylon, dated to around 1750 BC during Hammurabi's reign, records a boy named Ibn Marduk, dedicated at age 11. His family compensated with a measure of barley and a ewe. Ibn Marduk rose to become a noted performer, his laments inscribed in later hymns, but the tablets hint at his inner turmoil through notations of restless spirit, code for the melancholy that plagued many eunuchs. Imagine him in the temple gardens, under acacia trees planted for shade, fingers tracing patterns in the dust, grief etching lines on his young face. He dares not speak of escape, guards patrol the walls, and the river gates are locked at dusk. Instead, he channels his pain into song, voice soaring in the evening air, a sound that chills the blood of listeners who sense the suffering woven into every note. Babylon's golden age under Hammurabi saw the expansion of such practices as the empire stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Zagros Mountains, incorporating diverse peoples into its religious fold. Priests traveled to conquered cities like Mari, where excavations in the 20th century AD uncovered palaces and temples echoing Babylonian styles. In Mari, around 1760 BC, King Zimri-Lim allied with Hammurabi, sending tribute that included young boys for the temples, their journeys marked by caravan dust and the creak of ox carts over rutted roads. One such caravan, documented in letters between the kings, carried a group of 10 virgins from the Amorite tribes, their fear palpable in the scribes' notes of trembling hands during inventories. Arriving in Babylon, they faced the same fate, bodies offered to Ishtar in rites that blended ecstasy and agony. The emotional weight presses heavy. For these boys, confusion reigns in the early days. Why me? Why this pain? Expressions harden over time, smiles rare, replaced by the vacant stare of those who've learned to bury feelings deep. Hesitation marks every step. A boy pauses before entering the ritual chamber, breath catching on the threshold, knowing what awaits. Grief manifests in quiet ways, a stolen moment weeping into a cloak's fold, the fabric muffling sobs, or nights staring at the moon through barred windows, longing for lost childhood. Fear underscores it all, not just of the knife, but of the god's supposed wrath. Tales of divine punishment whispered by elders, plagues, floods, the Euphrates turning red with blood. Yet the priests themselves navigate complex dynamics. En-Malkar, in private scrolls not meant for public eyes, confesses doubts in coded language, his quill hesitating on the clay, inking words like the weight of purity. He knows the rites sustain the temple's influence, drawing devotees who believe in the power of such sacrifices. Kings consult them for omens before battles, like Hammurabi's campaigns against Elam in 1765 BC, where eunuch priests divined victory from star patterns. Unspoken alliances form. A priest might favor a boy with extra lessons in music, teaching him to play the lyre strung with gut from sacred bulls, a small mercy in the rigid hierarchy. As years pass, you now transformed witness the cycle repeat. A new boy arrives, eyes wide like yours once were, from a family of potters in the southern quarter. You help prepare him, hands steady but heart heavy, the irony biting, survivor turned participant. The temple buzzes with festivals like the Akitu in the spring of 1750 BC, when Hammurabi himself processes through the streets, his chariot wheels rumbling over palm leaves scattered by crowds. You perform then, body painted with ochre, dancing amid incense clouds that sting the eyes, the crowd's cheers a distant roar masking your inner scream. Expanding beyond one life, consider the broader canvas. After Hammurabi's death in 1750 BC, his son Samsu-iluna ruled from 1749 to 1712 BC, facing rebellions that tested the temple's stability. In those turbulent times, priests intensified dedications, seeking divine favor through more offerings. Tablets from Larsa, conquered by Hammurabi in 1763 BC, list increased numbers of Asinio, their origins traced to war captives. Young males spared the sword only to face the knife. One such captive, a boy named Kurum from the Sealand tribes, endured the rite in 1720 BC, his story pieced from fragmented records showing his later role in rituals honoring Nabu, god of scribes. The sensory world of Babylon immerses fully, the feel of silk veils against scarred skin during dances, smooth and cool like river stones, the crackle of flames in sacrificial pits where animal hearts sizzle, their smoke carrying prayers upward, the taste of ritual beer brewed from emmer wheat, and flavored with coriander, shared in communal cups that bind the devoted. Winter brings breath visible in the chill air of dawn processions, frost rhyming the ziggurat steps as you climb to offer hymns. Summer heat warps the air, sweat beading on brows during long vigils, the sun baking the clay until it cracks like old leather. Power's undercurrents run deep. Priests like Enmakar wield influence over kings, but fear their own high council, where betrayals simmer unspoken. A whisper of heresy could lead to exile or worse, burial, alive in the temple foundations, a practice noted in building inscriptions from the period. Boys learn to navigate this, forming silent bonds, sharing glances that convey volumes, a furrowed brow signaling caution, a slight nod offering comfort. Confusion lingers lifelong. Some eunuchs in rare confessional texts describe a fractured sense of self. Bodies neither man nor woman, voices echoing that limbo. By the time of the Kassite dynasty, starting around 1595 BC after the Hittite sack of Babylon in 1595 BC under Mursili I, the practices evolved but persisted. New rulers adopted old gods, and temples like Esagila, dedicated to Marduk, saw renovations funded by kings like Kurigalzu I early 14th century BC. Eunuch priests remained integral, their numbers swelling during times of drought, when omens demanded greater sacrifices. One tablet from this era, found in the ruins of Dur-Kurigalzu, records a mass dedication of 20 boys in 1400 BC, their cries described as echoing like the howls of jackals in the reed marshes. Emotional depth colours these accounts. A priest named Adad Shuma Yusur, serving in 1300 BC, left a lament on clay, grieving a favoured Asinu, who died from wound complications. His words raw, his light dimmed like the evening star, leaving shadows in my heart. Such grief, rarely voiced, highlights the human cost, bonds formed in suffering. Boys like you grapple with identity, hesitation in every mirror glance, polished copper reflecting altered forms, confusion swirling in the distorted image. The Neo-Babylonian Empire, rising under Nabopolassar in 626 BC, brought grandeur but no reprieve. Nebuchadnezzar II, reigning from 605 to 562 BC, rebuilt the Ziggurat Itimenanki, its 7 tiers reaching 91 meters, a monument to divine power. His inscriptions boast of temple enhancements, including quarters for cultic personnel. During his siege of Jerusalem in 597 BC, captives included young Judean males, some dedicated to Babylonian gods, facing similar fates as per chronicles in the Babylonian chronicle tablets. Imagine a boy named Daniel, though the biblical figure is from 605 BC, but historical parallels exist in deported youths listed in ration tablets, their virginity noted for ritual suitability. In Nebuchadnezzar's court, priests like Belshazzar, not the biblical one but a namesake official, oversaw dedications, their robes heavy with embroidery depicting Ishtar's 8-pointed star. The acts grew more elaborate, incorporating music from harps with strings of twisted horsehair, the notes piercing the air during the procedure to drown out screams. Sensory details sharpen, the sting of herbal smoke in the eyes, tears mixing with sweat, the rough texture of bindings against wrists, fibers biting into skin, the metallic clink of instruments on trays of beaten silver. Psychological layers deepen. Fear evolves into resignation, but flashes of rebellion surface. A boy spitting defiance, only to be subdued with opium-laced wine, his confusion amplified by the drug's haze. Grief for lost futures manifests in dreams of running through barley fields, waking to the cold reality of temple walls. Power dynamics shift subtly. Some eunuchs rise to advisory roles, like one named Mushalim Marduk in 550 BC, who influenced royal policy through oracles, his hesitation in council revealing inner conflicts. Even in decline, under Persian conquest in 539 BC by Cyrus the Great, the temples endured. Cyrus, born around 600 BC and dying in 530 BC, respected Babylonian religion, as per his cylinder inscription, allowing rites to continue. Eunuch priests performed until Hellenistic times, their legacy fading but echoes persisting in later cults. Similar shadows linger today, abuses veiled in secrecy, power cloaking harm in modern guises. But back then, in the firelight of ancient nights, the cycle spun on. And so, as the ziggurat's shadow stretches long in your memory, the most horrifying acts, the severing of innocence, the remaking of flesh for forgotten gods, echo in the wind off the Euphrates, a whisper of dust and dread that carries from that boy's bed to eternity.